Welcome to Housewives Tonight, your front row seat to the biggest headlines, unexpected turns, and exclusive behind-the-scenes insights from the world of reality TV. Stay ahead with every story that matters. Few couples in the history of the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills have represented stability quite the way Kyle Richards and Mauricio Umansky did. For years, they appeared to embody the kind of marriage many viewers believed could survive Hollywood pressures, demanding careers, public scrutiny, and the constant presence of cameras. That image became part of the RHOBH brand itself. But now, even years after announcing their separation, their relationship continues to raise difficult questions, not only about what happened behind closed doors, but about why two people who shared 3 decades together still haven't officially ended their marriage. And just when many fans believed the emotional dust had begun to settle, a deeply personal anniversary message reopened old wounds in a way few expected. At the same time, another Beverly Hills story is creating a very different conversation. Dorit Kemsley's ongoing financial disagreements with PK have sparked fresh debate about money, responsibility, and life after separation. Meanwhile, former Housewives personality Brandi Glanville has stepped into the discussion with opinions that have divided viewers just as much as the couple's financial dispute itself. Today's story isn't simply about relationships ending. It's about what happens afterward. It's about loyalty, regret, responsibility, and the complicated emotions that don't simply disappear because a couple decides to live separate lives. And as these conversations unfold both on screen and off, fans are once again asking whether reality television reflects real life or simply magnifies every painful moment. Let's start with the relationship that has remained one of the most talked about stories in the Bravo universe. For longtime RHOBH viewers, Kyle Richards and Mauricio Umansky were more than just another television couple. Over many seasons, audiences watched them celebrate milestones, raise their daughters, support one another's careers, and navigate the everyday pressures that come with life in Beverly Hills. While other housewives' marriages often became storylines filled with explosive arguments or dramatic breakups, Kyle and Mauricio frequently appeared to offer something different, a partnership that seemed grounded despite the glamorous lifestyle surrounding it. That perception made news of their separation especially significant. When the couple confirmed they had separated in 2023, reactions poured in almost immediately. Fans who had followed their journey for years struggled to understand how a marriage that lasted 3 decades could suddenly reach such an uncertain place. What made the situation even more unusual was that neither Kyle nor Mauricio immediately filed for divorce. Instead, their relationship entered a gray area, one that left both viewers and the media wondering exactly what the future held. Were they taking time apart? Was reconciliation still possible? Or had they simply chosen not to make their separation legally final? Those unanswered questions have lingered ever since. That uncertainty has become part of why every public interaction between them receives so much attention. Even small gestures are analyzed by viewers searching for clues about whether hope still exists for the couple. And that's exactly why one recent moment carried so much emotional weight. A preview for an upcoming episode of Real Housewives' Ultimate Girls Trip. The Roaring '20s offered fans a surprisingly intimate glimpse into Kyle's emotional state. During a conversation with fellow housewife Vicki Gunvalson, Kyle reflected on what should have been one of the happiest milestones in any marriage, their 30th wedding anniversary. Instead of celebrating together, she found herself confronting the reality of how much had changed. Kyle revealed that Mauricio had sent her a text message on their anniversary. The message itself wasn't long, but according to Kyle, its emotional impact was immediate. She shared that Mauricio told her the anniversary was always a difficult day, expressed that he loved her, and admitted he didn't understand how they had arrived at this point in their lives. He also reportedly said he had always believed their relationship was stronger than the circumstances now surrounding them. For many viewers, those words carried more emotion than a lengthy public statement ever could. The message didn't contain accusations. It didn't assign blame. Instead, it reflected something much more complicated, two people recognizing the painful distance between the life they once imagined and the reality they're now living. Kyle admitted that receiving the text overwhelmed her emotionally, rather than bringing comfort. It reminded her of everything the anniversary was supposed to represent. 30 years together isn't simply another date on the calendar. It's decades of shared memories, family milestones, personal sacrifices, career growth, children growing into adults, countless experiences that become impossible to separate from the relationship itself. When something built over that much time begins to unravel, anniversaries often become emotional reminders rather than celebrations. And that appeared to be exactly what Kyle was experiencing. As the conversation continued, Vicky Gunvalson listened while Kyle described her feelings. From Vicky's perspective, watching such a long-standing marriage struggle was heartbreaking. In a confessional interview, Vicky reflected on how many people had viewed Kyle and Mauricio's relationship as an example of lasting love. She suggested that the couple represented the kind of marriage many people hoped was still possible, making their separation especially difficult for longtime viewers to accept. That observation speaks to something larger than reality television itself. Fans don't simply watch Housewives because of luxury homes or extravagant vacations. They also invest emotionally in the relationships. Over many seasons, viewers begin to celebrate anniversaries, weddings, friendships, and family moments almost alongside the cast members themselves. When those relationships change dramatically, audiences often feel that loss too. However, the conversation didn't remain sympathetic for long. As Kyle continued explaining how difficult the anniversary had been, Vicky offered advice that immediately sparked debate among viewers. Rather than simply comforting Kyle, Vicky argued that Kyle should feel ashamed about allowing the marriage to reach this point. According to the discussion shown in the preview, Vicky suggested that ending such a long marriage affected more than just the couple themselves. She argued that their family had looked to them as an example of commitment, and that separating sent the wrong message about working through difficult periods in a relationship. She emphasized the idea that marriage is meant to endure hardship rather than end because circumstances become painful. From Vicky's perspective, Kyle and Mauricio had represented the kind of lifelong partnership many couples aspire to build. She believed they were supposed to grow old together. For some viewers, those comments reflected traditional views about marriage and commitment. Others, however, interpreted them very differently. One of the biggest questions raised by this conversation is whether anyone outside a marriage truly understands what happened inside it. Long-time relationships often involve years of private conversations, personal struggles, compromises, disappointments, and moments that never become public knowledge. Even families sometimes don't know everything taking place behind closed doors. So while some people may agree with Vicky's perspective about commitment, others may believe it's impossible to judge another couple's decisions without understanding every factor involved. That difference in perspective is exactly why the exchange has generated so much discussion among Bravo fans. Kyle herself didn't suggest that ending the marriage had been easy. In fact, everything about her emotional response suggested the opposite. She acknowledged how deeply the anniversary still affected her and indicated that moving forward remained an ongoing emotional process rather than something she had simply accepted. Her reaction illustrated an important reality that many people experience after long relationships end. A separation doesn't necessarily erase love. It doesn't automatically erase memories. And it certainly doesn't erase decades of shared history. Instead, people often find themselves grieving not only the relationship itself, but also the future they once imagined together. That's a very different kind of loss than many viewers expect to see portrayed on reality television. And perhaps that's why this particular scene resonated so strongly. It wasn't centered around dramatic confrontations or explosive arguments. Instead, it focused on something quieter: regret, reflection, and the realization that some emotional milestones remain painful no matter how much time passes. But while viewers were still processing Kyle's emotional anniversary conversation, another layer of the discussion began to emerge, one that shifted attention away from Kyle's feelings and toward the person offering the advice. Because as soon as Vicky's comments aired, many fans began questioning whether she was the right person to lecture anyone about marriage, loyalty, or commitment. And that's where the conversation became far more complicated. The moment Vicky Gunvalson's comments became public, the conversation quickly shifted away from Kyle Richards and toward Vicky herself. Instead of debating whether Kyle and Mauricio still had a chance to reconcile, many viewers began asking a different question. Was Vicky's advice fair? Or was it an example of someone overlooking her own complicated history? That's what transformed an emotional conversation into a much broader debate about accountability, perspective, and whether personal experience gives someone credibility or exposes them to accusations of hypocrisy. Vicky's central message was clear. She believed a marriage that had lasted 3 decades should not end without exhausting every possible effort to save it. During her conversation with Kyle, she emphasized that milestone anniversaries would likely continue to carry emotional weight for years to come. She reflected on her own experiences and suggested that even decades later, those memories never completely disappear. From her perspective, the pain doesn't simply vanish with time. Instead, it becomes something people learn to live with. On the surface, that observation may resonate with many people who have experienced divorce or the end of a long-term relationship. Milestone dates often reopen emotional chapters that seemed closed, reminding people of the life they once expected to have. But for many Bravo fans, the issue wasn't the emotional truth behind Vicky's comments. It was the person delivering them. Almost immediately, viewers began revisiting Vicky's own history on reality television. Over the years, her personal life has unfolded in front of cameras just as publicly as Kyle's has. Like many longtime housewives, Vicky's relationships, family struggles, and difficult decisions have all become part of her television legacy. Because of that history, some fans questioned whether she was in a position to criticize another woman for the outcome of her marriage. The discussion wasn't simply about whether Vicky believed marriage should be preserved. It became about consistency. Should someone who has experienced significant relationship challenges themselves be careful before judging another couple? Or does personal experience actually give them the right to speak candidly because they've lived through similar heartbreak? That's where opinions became sharply divided. Some viewers believed Vicky was speaking from genuine regret. They interpreted her comments as someone trying to prevent another person from carrying the same emotional burden she has described feeling after her own marriage ended. Under that interpretation, her words weren't intended as criticism, but as a warning about how painful long-term regret can become. Others saw something entirely different. They argued that advice rooted in personal experience is valuable only when it's accompanied by equal self-reflection. From that perspective, reminding Kyle of her responsibilities while minimizing the complexity of her situation felt unfair. And that's exactly why this exchange generated so much conversation beyond the episode itself. Relationships rarely fail because of one single moment. They usually involve years of changing circumstances, evolving priorities, communication challenges, and private experiences that outsiders never fully understand. Without knowing every detail, assigning responsibility becomes incredibly difficult. Kyle herself didn't respond by arguing with Vicky. Instead, she appeared emotional and reflective, acknowledging that the anniversary remained painful while explaining that she was trying to move forward. That response suggested someone still processing loss rather than celebrating a new chapter. It's an important distinction. Sometimes public conversations about celebrity breakups focus so heavily on blame that they overlook grief. But grief doesn't always follow legal paperwork. A couple can separate emotionally long before announcing it publicly, and they can continue grieving long after deciding to live apart. For someone like Kyle, whose marriage lasted approximately 30 years, that emotional process is naturally more complicated than simply deciding whether to file for divorce. That's part of what made Mauricio's anniversary message so significant. Rather than expressing anger or resentment, his reported words reflected confusion and sadness. According to Kyle, he admitted he never imagined they would reach this point. Whether viewers interpret that as hope, regret, or simple reflection, the message underscored something many separated couples experience. Ending a relationship doesn't automatically erase affection. People can simultaneously acknowledge that circumstances have changed while still mourning what was lost. That emotional contradiction is often difficult to explain. Reality television, however, sometimes captures those moments more honestly than audiences expect. And while Kyle's story was already prompting thoughtful discussions about marriage and commitment, another Beverly Hills headline was gaining momentum for completely different reasons. Instead of focusing on emotional heartbreak, the next story centered on finances. Specifically, the increasingly public disagreements involving Dorit Kemsley and PK. Financial disputes can become some of the most complicated aspects of any separation. Questions about income, expenses, children's needs, property, and lifestyle often become just as emotionally charged as the relationship itself. When those conversations happen publicly, every decision is scrutinized. According to the discussion surrounding the situation, PK reportedly wanted Dorit to reduce her spending while broader financial matters continued to unfold. That immediately sparked strong reactions. Some observers felt it was a practical request. Others believed it ignored the lifestyle both of them had built together over many years. As often happens within the Housewives universe, the issue quickly expanded beyond facts into personal opinions. One of the loudest perspectives came from former housewife Brandi Glanville. Brandi made it clear that she largely sided with Dorit. Her argument reflected the belief that Dorit earns her own income through various professional opportunities, including television and other projects, and therefore should have the freedom to spend the money she earns without being controlled by her estranged husband. It's an argument many people can understand. Financial independence often changes the dynamics of modern relationships. If both spouses have successful careers, questions naturally arise about who should be responsible for maintaining certain aspects of the family's lifestyle after separation. Brandi appeared to believe that Dorit's personal earnings justified maintaining the standard of living she had become accustomed to. But not everyone agreed with that interpretation. Another perspective emerged almost immediately. According to the discussion surrounding the reported court documents, PK was still allegedly covering many significant household expenses. Those reportedly included costs associated with the family home, the children's education, childcare, and other major financial responsibilities connected to raising their family. If those claims accurately reflect the situation, then the financial picture becomes much more complicated than simply asking who earns money, because earning income and sharing financial obligations are two very different conversations. Supporters of PK's position argued that if one parent continues paying the majority of major expenses, then it would be reasonable to expect the other parent to contribute proportionally, especially if they also earn a substantial income. Supporters of Dorit's position, however, might see the issue differently. They could argue that every separation has unique financial arrangements negotiated between attorneys, accountants, and the individuals involved. Without knowing every detail, drawing firm conclusions becomes difficult. That's why this story has generated so many differing opinions. Much like Kyle and Mauricio's marriage, the public only sees portions of a much larger picture. Financial records may reveal numbers. Court filings may outline obligations, but they rarely capture the emotional dynamics behind those decisions. As the debate intensified, another question quietly emerged beneath the headlines. Is this really about money, or is money simply becoming the latest battleground in a much deeper relationship conflict? That distinction matters because financial disagreements after separation often represent much more than dollars and cents. They can reflect unresolved emotions, shifting power dynamics, differing expectations, and conflicting visions of fairness. And once those issues become public, every expense, every purchase, and every financial decision becomes part of a much larger conversation. By this point, Bravo fans weren't just discussing relationships anymore. They were debating accountability, responsibility, independence, and what fairness actually looks like when two lives that were once deeply intertwined begin moving in separate directions. But the strongest opinions surrounding Dorit and PK's financial dispute were still ahead, because once reported income figures and household expenses entered the conversation, the debate became even more intense and far more divisive among Housewives fans. By the time the discussion turned to specific financial responsibilities, the conversation surrounding Dorit and PK had evolved into something much bigger than a celebrity breakup. It became a debate about expectations, fairness, and what financial partnership should look like once a marriage reaches the point of separation. Unlike Kyle Richards and Mauricio Umansky's story, which centered on emotional reflection and lingering affection, Dorit and PK's situation drew attention because it highlighted the practical realities that often follow the breakdown of a marriage. When emotions collide with finances, even ordinary decisions can become highly scrutinized. According to the discussion surrounding the reported court filings, PK was said to be covering many of the family's largest expenses. Those reported obligations included costs related to the family home, their children's education, childcare, and other significant household responsibilities. If those reported details accurately reflect the arrangement, they naturally raise an important question. How should financial responsibilities be divided when both spouses have the ability to earn substantial incomes? It's a question without a simple answer. Every relationship operates differently, and every separation comes with its own legal agreements and personal circumstances. While some couples divide expenses equally, others structure financial responsibilities based on income, custody arrangements, or negotiated settlements. That's why many fans have been careful not to jump to definitive conclusions. Still, the reported figures sparked plenty of discussion. According to the conversation featured in the transcript, Dorit was described as earning a significant annual income through her television career and other professional opportunities. The discussion suggested that if someone is earning at that level, many viewers would naturally expect them to contribute toward major household expenses rather than leaving nearly all of those obligations to their estranged spouse. Supporters of that viewpoint argued that financial independence also comes with financial responsibility. In their eyes, contributing to mortgage payments, educational expenses, or other family costs would seem like a reasonable expectation if both parties have substantial earning potential. Others viewed the situation differently. They pointed out that the public rarely has access to every financial detail involved in a separation. Court documents may outline certain responsibilities, but they don't always explain why those arrangements exist or whether they were agreed upon by both parties. Without that complete picture, it's difficult to determine whether one side is carrying more than its fair share or simply following an agreement reached during legal negotiations. That uncertainty has become one of the defining features of this story. Just as viewers don't know every detail of Kyle and Mauricio's marriage, they also don't know every financial conversation that has taken place between Dorit and PK. And that's where commentary can sometimes move faster than confirmed information. One of the strongest opinions came from Brandy Glanville. Brandy's perspective was unmistakable. She believed Dorit should be able to maintain the lifestyle she's built because she earns her own income. From her point of view, a successful woman shouldn't have to justify how she spends the money she works to earn. That argument resonated with viewers who see financial independence as an important part of modern relationships. If someone has built a successful career, many people believe they should have the freedom to make personal financial decisions without constant criticism from a former partner. However, not everyone accepted that reasoning without reservation. Another perspective quickly emerged. Some commentators argued that earning a high income doesn't necessarily eliminate shared responsibilities, especially when children and family expenses remain involved. From that point of view, the discussion wasn't about controlling someone's spending. Instead, it was about whether both parents should contribute proportionally to the costs associated with maintaining their family's lifestyle. The contrast between those viewpoints highlights why this story has attracted so much attention. It's not simply a Housewives storyline anymore. It's become a conversation many viewers recognize from real life. Questions about who pays for what after separation affect countless families. The only difference is that most people don't have those conversations unfolding in front of television cameras and entertainment headlines. As the debate continued, another observation began circulating. Some critics suggested that maintaining an expensive public image can sometimes create additional pressure during periods of financial uncertainty. Reality television has always celebrated luxury, beautiful homes, designer fashion, luxury vehicles, exclusive vacations, five-star restaurants, extravagant parties. Those elements are part of what initially attracted audiences to franchises like the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. But maintaining that image can become significantly more complicated when relationships change and financial priorities shift. For viewers, it creates an interesting contradiction. On one hand, audiences enjoy watching lavish lifestyles. On the other hand, they often question whether those lifestyles remain sustainable during periods of personal transition. That tension lies at the heart of the discussion surrounding Dorit and PK. It's not simply about spending money. It's about adapting to new realities while still living in a world where appearances matter. And perhaps that's why opinions remain so divided. Some viewers admire Dorit's confidence and independence. Others believe practical adjustments become unavoidable whenever family finances change. Neither perspective fully answers every question because, once again, the public doesn't have access to every detail. What they do have are fragments of information, public filings, televised conversations, and commentary from people connected to the Bravo universe. Those pieces form a picture, but not necessarily the complete picture. That's an important distinction to remember. Reality television often encourages viewers to choose sides, yet real life is rarely that simple. Relationships don't usually end because of one disagreement. Financial conflicts don't appear overnight. Instead, they're often the result of years of changing circumstances, evolving priorities, and complicated personal decisions that outsiders may never fully understand. And that broader perspective connects both major stories unfolding in Beverly Hills. Whether discussing Kyle and Mauricio or Dorit and PK, one common theme keeps resurfacing. Long-term relationships are incredibly complex. When they begin to change, the emotional consequences and financial realities rarely unfold in a straight line. Instead, every new development raises another question. Every public statement creates another interpretation. Every interview invites another round of analysis. That's exactly what has kept Bravo fans invested in these stories. Not because every answer has been revealed, but because so many questions remain unresolved. As discussions continued online, fans began sharing their own experiences with marriage, divorce, long-term commitment, and financial responsibility. Some related deeply to Kyle's emotional reaction over a milestone anniversary, saying that important dates can remain painful long after relationships change. Others focused on Dorit's situation, arguing that financial independence should never be confused with financial isolation. Still, others emphasized that no one outside a marriage truly knows what happened behind closed doors. That may be the one point nearly everyone can agree on. Public appearances often reveal only a fraction of private reality. And while viewers naturally develop opinions based on what they watch, those opinions are ultimately shaped by limited information. That's what makes reality television so fascinating. The audience sees enough to become emotionally invested, but rarely enough to know the entire story. As these conversations continue, fans are left weighing sympathy against accountability, independence against shared responsibility, and personal freedom against lifelong commitment. Those competing ideas ensure that discussions surrounding Beverly Hills remain active long after the episodes themselves end. But with emotions still running high and opinions continuing to evolve, one final question remains. Where do these stories actually stand today? What are the lasting consequences for the relationships involved? And what should viewers take away from everything that's unfolded? That's where the story heads next. As these conversations continue to unfold across the Bravo community, one thing has become increasingly clear. There are very few easy answers. Whether viewers are discussing Kyle Richards and Mauricio Umansky's emotional separation or Dorit and PK Kemsley's financial disagreements, both stories reveal just how complicated life can become after a relationship changes course. For Kyle, the emotional impact appears to extend far beyond a single television scene. The anniversary conversation shown in the preview wasn't about a dramatic confrontation or an explosive argument. Instead, it captured something much quieter and, for many viewers, much more relatable. It showed that even after years of separation, certain dates can still carry enormous emotional weight. A wedding anniversary isn't simply another day on the calendar. It's a reminder of promises once made, milestones once celebrated, and a future that once seemed certain. According to the preview, Mauricio's message acknowledged that reality in a deeply personal way, rather than focusing on blame. He reportedly reflected on how difficult the day had become and admitted that he never imagined their relationship would reach this point. Whether viewers interpret that message as an expression of lingering love, unresolved regret, or simply respect for everything they shared together, it reminded many fans that emotions rarely disappear simply because a couple separates. For Kyle, That appears to be the challenge she continues to navigate. The relationship may have changed, but 30 years of memories don't simply disappear overnight. At the same time, Vicky Gunvalson's comments have created a conversation of their own. Some fans appreciated her emphasis on commitment, believing that long marriages deserve every possible chance before coming to an end. Others felt her criticism placed too much responsibility on Kyle, without acknowledging that every relationship involves private struggles the public may never fully understand. That disagreement reflects one of the biggest themes surrounding this story. Marriage is deeply personal. Friends can offer advice. Family members can share opinions. Fans can debate what they believe happened. But ultimately, only the people inside the relationship know the full story. That's an important reminder whenever reality television intersects with real life. Television may capture meaningful moments, but it rarely captures every conversation, every compromise, or every difficult decision that led there. The same principle applies to Dorit and PK's ongoing financial situation. While public discussion has focused on reported expenses, income, and lifestyle, those headlines represent only part of a much larger picture. Financial negotiations after separation are often incredibly complicated. They involve legal agreements, parenting responsibilities, long-term planning, and countless details that never become public knowledge. Because of that, viewers should be cautious about treating individual reports as the complete story. Still, the discussion has highlighted an issue many people face outside reality television. How do two people untangle lives that have been financially intertwined for years? Who should continue paying certain expenses? How should responsibilities change once the relationship changes? Those aren't questions unique to celebrities. They're questions countless families work through every day. That's part of why Dorit and PK's situation has resonated with so many viewers. Although their lifestyle may be extraordinary, the underlying challenges feel surprisingly familiar. Another interesting aspect of these stories is how quickly public opinion can shift. One episode, one interview, or one reported detail can dramatically change how audiences interpret a situation. Some viewers who initially sympathized with one person later find themselves understanding another perspective. Others remain firmly committed to one side based on their own experiences with relationships or divorce. Neither response is necessarily right or wrong. It simply reflects how personal these topics are. Everyone brings their own life experiences into the conversation. Someone who has experienced a painful divorce may interpret Kyle's anniversary emotions differently than someone who has remained happily married for decades. Likewise, someone who has navigated complicated financial arrangements after separation may view Dorit and PK's situation through an entirely different lens. Those personal experiences shape the way audiences connect with reality television. And perhaps that's one reason these stories continue generating discussion long after the episodes air. They're not just about celebrities. They're about emotions many viewers recognize: loss, hope, regret, responsibility, forgiveness, uncertainty. Those themes extend far beyond Beverly Hills. Looking ahead, the biggest unanswered question remains the future of Kyle and Mauricio's relationship. As of the information discussed in today's story, they remain separated, and there has been no confirmation that either has finalized a divorce. That uncertainty naturally leaves room for continued speculation. However, speculation should never be confused with fact. At this point, viewers know they continue to share a long history, a family, and memories that neither appears willing to dismiss. What the future ultimately holds is something only they can determine. The same is true for Dorit and PK. Their financial discussions remain part of an evolving situation, and future developments could reshape public understanding once additional information becomes available. Until then, much of the conversation will continue to be driven by reported details, public statements, and viewers' interpretations. And perhaps that's the biggest takeaway from everything we've discussed today. Reality television often encourages audiences to choose sides, but real life rarely divides itself into heroes and villains. Most relationships end or evolve because of countless small moments rather than one dramatic event. Most financial disagreements involve layers of complexity that headlines simply can't capture. And most emotional stories contain perspectives that deserve thoughtful consideration rather than quick judgment. Kyle Richards' emotional anniversary conversation reminded viewers that love and heartbreak can exist at the same time. Vicki Gunvalson's comments reminded audiences that personal experiences shape the advice people give, even when others may disagree with it. And Dorit and PK's financial dispute highlighted how difficult it can be to separate two lives that have been connected for years. Together, these stories offer something larger than celebrity gossip. They provide a glimpse into how relationships evolve under extraordinary public scrutiny. Every conversation, every headline, every televised moment, every public reaction, they all become part of an ongoing narrative that millions of viewers continue to follow, not simply because they're entertaining, but because they reflect challenges that exist far beyond reality television. Only time will reveal how these stories ultimately end. Will Kyle and Mauricio eventually close this chapter legally, or will they continue navigating an undefined future? Will Dorit and PK find common ground regarding their financial responsibilities? And how will these developments shape future seasons of the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills and the broader Bravo universe? For now, those questions remain unanswered. And that's exactly why fans continue watching. What do you think about Kyle Richards' emotional reaction to her 30th wedding anniversary? Do you agree with Vicki Gunvalson's advice? Or do you think only Kyle and Mauricio truly know what happened inside their marriage? And when it comes to Dorit and PK's financial dispute, who do you believe has the stronger argument based on the information that's been made public? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the latest Beverly Hills headlines, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Housewives Tonight, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next major Bravo story. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.